You? The woman's voice sliced through the wind like a blade. You can't even afford a bus ticket and you think you can fly my helicopter? The crowd of executives laughed behind her, tight smiles, tailored suits gleaming under the afternoon sun. The rooftop helipad of Vanguard Aerotech, the nation's largest private aviation firm, shimmered with heat. The golden logo beneath their feet looked like it had been stamped into the steel itself. At the center stood Clara Morgan, 34, the company's CEO, poised, brilliant, ruthless. Every magazine called her the Angel of Altitude, but right now there was nothing angelic about her. Her blonde hair tied neatly behind her head, and a cruel smirk playing on her lips. Facing her was a man who didn't belong in her world at all. He was barefoot, his clothes torn, his face shadowed by weeks of exhaustion. Yet his eyes, sharp, steady, and oddly familiar, met hers without fear. "My name's Robert," he said quietly. "And you asked for a pilot." Clara laughed, a soft, mocking sound that drew more laughter from her board members. "You're standing on a rooftop of the most expensive aviation company in the country, and you want me to believe a homeless man can fly a $10 million prototype?" Robert didn't flinch. "I can fly anything with wings or rotors." The laughter died a little. There was something in his voice, calm, commanding, precise. Clara tilted her head. "Prove it." She pointed toward the sleek silver helicopter gleaming behind her. "That's the VX-9 Skylancer, our latest prototype. It hasn't been flown outside simulation yet. If you can take it up, hover, and land it safely, I'll—" She paused, her lips curving into a taunting grin. "I'll marry you." The rooftop gasped. The executives exchanged amused glances. Cameras from media partners flicked on. Robert stared at her, unreadable. "And if I don't?" Her tone was ice. "Then you'll go back to the street you came from." He stepped forward, the wind tugging at his tattered shirt. "Fine," he said softly. "But you'll keep your word." For a split second, Clara's confidence wavered. Something about him felt practiced, familiar, but she brushed it off, motioning to her chief engineer. "Unlock it." The engineer hesitated. "Ma'am, he's not certified." "Do it," she snapped. "This will be entertaining." The man nodded reluctantly and keyed the access code. The helicopter's engines whined to life, its blades slowly rotating as sunlight danced across the fuselage. Clara folded her arms. "Show me what you've got, pilot." Robert stepped into the cockpit like a man stepping into a memory. His hands traced the control panels, the switches, the flight stick, every motion precise, almost reverent. The interior smelled of new leather and jet oil, and beneath it all, the faint hum of power waiting to be unleashed. He closed his eyes. Same feel. Different badge. The crowd outside laughed again, their voices muffled through the glass. Clara leaned closer to the window, calling out, "Don't break my toy, darling." Robert flipped the main power switch. The engine roared. The laughter stopped. The rotor speed increased, blades cutting the air with lethal grace. The prototype lifted, smooth, steady, perfect. A gust of wind scattered papers across the helipad. Cameras rolled. Clara's grin faltered. The man who looked like a beggar was flying the VX-9 like he'd built it himself. Robert brought it into a hover, no tremor, no shake. Then, as if bored, he pushed it forward, tilting it into a near-vertical climb. Gasps erupted. Executives stumbled back from the edge as the helicopter disappeared above the skyline. "Jesus!" someone whispered. Clara's heartbeat raced. "He's insane. He's going to crash it." But then, the Skylancer reappeared, spiraling downward in a flawless corkscrew maneuver, blades slicing through air with surgical precision. At the last second, it leveled out, hovering inches above the pad before lowering gently onto the landing mark. Silence. Then applause broke out. Hesitant. Confused. Awed. Robert stepped out, wiping sweat from his brow. His voice was steady. "Flight test complete." Clara stared at him. How did you do that?" He met her eyes. "You said if I fly it, you'd marry me." The crowd chuckled nervously, unsure if he was serious. But Robert's expression didn't waver. Clara crossed her arms, forcing composure. "That was impressive. I'll give you that." But anyone can memorize a manual. Robert took a slow step closer. You don't memorize instinct, Miss Morgan? Something about the way he said her name made her pulse skip. Who are you? She whispered. He looked past her to the VX9, the logo glinting on its side. You built this model using a scrap design from the Aerosyn project, didn't you? Clara froze. How do you know that? Robert smiled faintly. Because I designed it. The words hit like a shockwave. Clara blinked. That's impossible. The Aerosyn project was classified military tech. Its chief designer died in an explosion 3 years ago. Robert's eyes darkened. I'm aware. He walked toward the edge of the helipad, the wind tugging at his shirt. They said the engine malfunctioned. But it didn't. Someone sabotaged it. Clara felt her stomach twist. You're saying you're Major Robert Cross, he finished. U.S. Air Force, retired, presumed dead. The rooftop went dead silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Clara's face drained of color. You can't be. I saw the report. You were gone? He said softly. Yeah, that's what they wanted you to think. He turned to face her fully now. Tell me, Clara, who gave you the design specs for your VX9? Her voice faltered. It came from a defense contractor, Global Aerotech. Robert's expression hardened. Then you've been funding a cover-up. The engineers and executives looked at each other uneasily. Clara's throat felt tight. What are you talking about? He took a step closer, voice low, dangerous. Global Aerotech stole the design from my team. They buried the project and me along with it. I've spent 3 years trying to find who signed the contracts. He looked directly into her eyes. Turns out your name was on one of them. Clara stumbled back. No, that can't be. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Robert said coldly. You were too busy climbing your empire. The rooftop buzzed with whispers now. The PR director was already texting someone, eyes wide. Clara struggled to steady her breath. If what you're saying is true, then why come here now? Robert's jaw tightened. Because the people who tried to kill me are still out there. And they're using your company to finish what they started. A helicopter shadow passed overhead, black, silent, unmarked. Robert's eyes flicked upward immediately. Get everyone off this roof, he said sharply. Clara frowned. What? Why, now? Before she could react, the unmarked chopper circled once and opened fire. Bullets shredded the glass facade of the penthouse. Screams erupted. Executives dove for cover as alarms blared. Robert grabbed Clara by the arm and pulled her down. Stay low! The VX9 trembled under impact, sparks flying from its tail rotor. The attacking chopper made another pass. Who are they? Clara shouted over the chaos. Mercenaries, Robert growled. They found me. The door to the stairwell burst open. Security guards poured onto the roof, weapons drawn, firing upward. The mercenary chopper veered off. Robert pulled Clara to her feet. We need to move now. She stumbled, shaking. Wait! My staff! They'll live if you do what I say. He dragged her toward the damaged VX9. Clara froze. You can't! It's hit! He shot her a look. Trust me. She hesitated, then climbed in. Robert fired up the engine. Smoke billowed from the tail, alarms flashing red, but his hands moved with surgical speed. Come on, come on! The rotors whirred to life again. The VX9 lifted shakily off the pad. Below them, the rooftop was chaos. Fire, debris, screaming. The black chopper turned, chasing them into the open sky. Clara clutched the seatbelt. They're following us! I know, he pushed the throttle. The prototype lurched forward, streaking between skyscrapers. Gunfire trailed them, echoing through the glass canyons of the city. Hold on! Robert barked. The Skylancer dove into a narrow gap between two towers. The pursuing chopper clipped a building and spun out, bursting into flame against a rooftop. The shockwave rattled the VX9. Clara screamed as the horizon spun. Robert steadied the controls, breathing hard. We're clear! For a moment, only the wind filled the cabin. Clara turned to him, voice trembling. They were trying to kill you, weren't they? Robert's eyes were fixed on the skyline. No. He glanced at her. They were trying to kill us. They landed 20 minutes later on an abandoned airstrip outside the city. The rain had begun to fall, thin, cold, relentless. Clara climbed out, shaken. Her pristine suit was ruined, her hair wild. She turned to him, anger and confusion burning together. "You put my company, my people, my life at risk for your revenge?" Robert didn't look at her. He walked to the side of the helicopter, pulling out a hidden metal case from beneath the floor panel. "This isn't revenge. It's survival." He opened the case. Inside were blueprints, documents, classified seals broken, signatures visible. Clara's breath caught when she saw one. Her own signature. Her voice dropped. "What is this?" Robert met her gaze. "Proof that Global Aerotech has been using your company to launder stolen tech and build weapons prototypes off the grid. Someone on your board helped them." She shook her head. No, that can't." He cut her off. "It's all here, Clara. The contracts, the flight data, the money trails. You're in the middle of something that's already claimed lives." He paused. "Including mine." Her throat went dry. "If this is true, then why save me?" Robert looked at her for a long moment, the rain running down his face. "Because you still have a chance to do what I couldn't, expose them." She stared at him, stunned. "Why?" She whispered, "Why help me?" His eyes softened slightly. "Because once I believed in you." Her breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" He looked away. "You don't remember me, do you?" Clara frowned, searching his face. There was something faintly familiar, the eyes, the voice, the way he said her name. No, I don't." Robert gave a bitter smile. "That's because the last time we met, you were a cadet. You came to my airfield for simulator training." She froze. "You were terrible," he said, almost fondly. "But you had guts. You told me you wanted to fly high enough to never be looked down on again." Clara's heart pounded. She whispered, "Captain Cross." He nodded. "Took you long enough." She stumbled back, overwhelmed. "You were my instructor. You're the reason I became a pilot at all. And you're the reason I survived that crash," he said quietly. "Because you told me, don't ever let them ground you." She stared at him, speechless. Robert turned, closing the metal case. "Now it's your turn not to let them ground you." The rain fell harder now, drumming on the fuselage. In the distance, faint sirens echoed. Maybe police, maybe not. Clara looked down at the case, then up at him. "What do we do now?" Robert's voice was steady. "Now we disappear, and then we fight back." He looked toward the dark horizon, where another set of headlights glimmered faintly through the fog. His expression hardened. "They already know where we are." "Get in the chopper, Clara!" Robert's voice was sharp, cutting through the roar of the rain. Through the foggy outline of the airstrip, the headlights were growing closer, dark SUVs, engines rumbling like thunder. Clara hesitated, her pulse hammering. "Who are they?" "Not friends," Robert said grimly. "If they reach us first, we're both dead." She swallowed her fear and climbed back into the VX-9. The engine sputtered but roared to life under Robert's touch. The rotors whined against the storm. The SUVs screeched to a halt at the far end of the runway. Armed men spilled out, weapons glinting in the lightning flashes. Robert pulled hard on the controls. "Hold tight!" The prototype shot upward, blades slicing through the downpour. Bullets tore through the rain, but they were already climbing into the low-hanging clouds. Clara gripped the seat, knuckles white. The world below blurred into streaks of light and thunder. "Where are we going?" she shouted over the engine. "Somewhere they won't follow," Robert said, eyes locked ahead. 10 minutes later, they landed deep within the countryside, on a deserted helipad beside an old metal hangar swallowed by weeds and rust. Clara stepped out, shivering from the rain and adrenaline. "What is this place?" Robert's boots crunched on gravel. "An old training site. Decommissioned years ago. I helped build it." He keyed in a code on a rusted panel. The hangar door groaned open, revealing the ghost of a once bustling command center. Desks, maps, a broken radio tower, and a single dusty American flag on the wall. Clara stared around, her breath fogging in the cold air. This was yours," Robert nodded. "The last place they didn't control." She crossed her arms tightly. "You keep saying they... Who are they exactly?" Robert dropped his soaked duffel bag onto a table and unzipped it. He pulled out a folder stuffed with documents, photos, and maps marked with red lines. Global Aerotech, he said. They're not just a defense contractor. They're an intelligence front. Black ops, assassinations, data control. They've infiltrated half the corporations in the defense industry, including Vanguard. Clara felt her stomach twist. You're saying my company, my life's work, has been their puppet? He looked at her. Not all of it, but enough. He spread out a photo. Grainy night vision. A man in a suit shaking hands with someone whose face was blurred. Robert pointed. That's your CFO, Martin Greeley. Clara's eyes widened. No, Martin's been with me since day one. He built Vanguard's financial structure. Exactly, Robert said. And he's been laundering Aerotech's funding through offshore accounts under your name. Clara's voice cracked. That's impossible. I sign every transfer personally. He slid another document toward her. Except for the encrypted ones routed through a subnetwork you can't access. Her trembling fingers brushed the papers. If this is true, I've been the face of their crimes. Robert's tone softened. You didn't know? That doesn't matter, she whispered. They'll destroy me either way. He stepped closer. Not if we hit first. Thunder rolled outside, the storm refusing to let up. Clara sat at the table, staring at the evidence spread before her. The photos, the bank logs, the schematics. Her company, her empire, was rotten to its core. She whispered, So what's your plan? Robert leaned over the table, tracing a finger along a map. There's a data vault under Aerotech's primary facility in D.C. Every contract, every bribe, every hit order, it's all archived there. If we get inside, we can prove everything. Clara frowned. How do we even reach it? We'd need access clearance, biometrics, encryption keys. He smirked. Already have them. Her eyes snapped up. How? Robert's expression darkened. Because I used to work there. Before they turned on me. For a long moment, Clara said nothing. The rain tapped against the metal roof like the ticking of a clock. Finally, she whispered, You were part of Aerotech. I was their top test pilot, he said quietly. The Aerosyn project was meant to create the world's first neural-linked aircraft, a machine that could read its pilots' instincts before they acted. It would change warfare forever. I built the prototype, and then I found out they were planning to sell it to mercenary states. He swallowed hard, eyes distant. I tried to expose them. The next day, my plane exploded on the runway. My wife and son were told I'd died in the crash. Clara's breath caught. You had a family? Had, he said flatly. They died 2 months later. House fire. Faulty wiring, they said. But I know who ordered it. He looked at her with steel in his eyes. Martin Greeley! Clara's knees nearly buckled. No, that can't. He wouldn't. Robert's jaw tightened. He did. I found the transfer. He approved the payment for the containment operation. Tears burned in her eyes. Robert, I had no idea. He turned away. You weren't supposed to. For a long, heavy silence, only the wind spoke. Then Clara straightened, wiping her tears. Then we end this. Together. Robert looked at her, surprised. You'd go against your own company? She met his gaze fiercely. If my company's been serving murderers, then it's not mine anymore. A flicker of respect passed between them, raw, wordless, powerful. By morning, the storm had cleared. The sky was pale silver, clouds drifting lazily across the dawn. Robert was already in the hangar, repairing the VX-9's damaged tail rotor. Clara approached. Her once immaculate suit replaced by worn cargo pants and a dark jacket she'd found in storage. You look almost human, Robert teased, glancing over. She rolled her eyes. You look almost clean, he chuckled. Fair trade. They worked in silence for a while, Clara holding the light while Robert rewired the circuits. Finally, she asked, When do we leave? Tonight, he said. DC facility will be lightly guarded after dark. If we can reach the lower vault, we can extract the files and leak them to the press before Aerotech realizes what's happening. And then, she asked, then we bring them down? Clara exhaled slowly. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said. But it's right, she smiled faintly. You really haven't changed since you were my instructor. He looked at her curiously. How so? You always believed people could fly higher than their fear. He smiled. Guess I still do. That night they flew under a moonless sky. The VX-9 sliced through the clouds, engines purring like a predator stalking its prey. Below, the Capitol shimmered faintly, tiny lights against a sea of darkness. Clara looked down, heart thudding. I can't believe I'm breaking into my own partner's facility. Robert's voice was calm. You're not breaking in. You're taking back what's yours. He angled the chopper lower, gliding toward a remote compound on the outskirts of the city, a massive steel complex with floodlights and motion sensors. He pointed. There, the west entrance. Clara frowned. That's guarded. Not for long. He flicked a switch. A small EMP device hummed in the cargo bay. The floodlights below flickered, then went dark. Robert smirked. Let's make some noise. The helicopter dropped into the shadows. They landed behind a row of shipping containers, invisible in the dark. Robert handed her a compact earpiece and a small pistol. Safety's here. Only use it if you have to. She hesitated. I know, he said gently. Just trust your instinct. They slipped through the side gate, moving silently across the concrete. Inside, the facility was a labyrinth of steel corridors and humming servers. Security drones hovered lazily above, their blue sensors scanning the air. Robert moved like a ghost, deactivating locks, bypassing panels. Clara followed, her heart pounding with every step. Finally, they reached a heavy blast door marked Archive Level, Restricted Access. Robert keyed in an override code. Almost there. The door hissed open. Inside, rows of data servers glowed softly. In the center stood a reinforced glass vault with biometric locks and a retinal scanner. Clara whispered, How do we get in? Robert knelt beside the console. With this. He pulled a small device from his bag and connected it to the lock. The lights flickered, then turned green. The vault door slid open. They stepped inside. Stacks of data drives filled the shelves, labeled, encrypted, secured. Robert inserted a flash key and began downloading files. Streams of classified data filled the screen. Contracts, hit lists, offshore accounts. Clara stared, horrified. Oh my God. They've been funding political assassinations, manipulating stock markets, even selling AI control systems to rogue states. Robert nodded grimly. And there's your name, see? Every transfer approved under your authority. They built you into their shield. Clara's voice broke. They made me their puppet. Robert's tone softened. Then let's cut the strings. A sudden beep echoed through the room. The monitor flashed red. Intrusion detected. Robert cursed under his breath. They found us. He yanked the flash key from the console. We've got enough. Move! They sprinted for the exit as alarms blared, red lights strobing through the corridors. Security lockdown initiated, a synthetic voice droned. All personnel to containment. Clara's lungs burned as they ran. We'll never make it to the chopper in time. Robert's eyes darted around. This way! He kicked open a maintenance hatch, pulling her into a narrow passage filled with pipes and cables. They crawled through the confined space, the sound of boots and shouting echoing behind them. Finally, they burst out into the open loading bay. Robert looked up. Searchlights were sweeping the sky. They've sealed the perimeter. We can't lift off, Clara gasped. Then what now? He looked toward a parked transport truck. We drive. They sped through the facility's service road, engines roaring. Gunfire rattled against the metal as guards fired from the gate. Robert slammed the accelerator. The truck burst through the chain-link fence, sparks flying. They tore down the highway, tires screeching against wet asphalt. Behind them, black SUVs appeared, closing in fast. Clara glanced back. They're gaining! Hold tight! Robert twisted the wheel sharply, veering off the main road onto a narrow bridge. The truck skidded, tires squealing, barely holding traction. The pursuing SUVs followed. Robert grabbed a small detonator from the dashboard. Time to close the door. He hit the switch. Behind them, the bridge erupted in fire, collapsing into the river below. The SUVs vanished in the explosion. Clara stared, stunned. You had that ready? He gave a grim smile. Always plan your exits. They drove until dawn, until the road became nothing but mist and silence. When they finally stopped, the world was quiet again. Clara turned to Robert. "Did we get enough?" He nodded, showing her the flash key. "More than enough. Everything we need to expose them." Her voice softened. "Then it's over." Robert looked at the horizon. "Not yet. They'll come after us harder now." He looked down at the drive in his hand, then at her. "This doesn't end with proof, Clara. It ends when we make the world listen." The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, washing their faces in gold. Robert turned the ignition off. The engine died. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Clara said quietly, "You lost everything once because of them?" He nodded. "And I'd lose it again if it meant ending them." She looked at him, her eyes full of both guilt and admiration. "You won't lose this time." He met her gaze. "You sound sure." "I am," she said softly. "Because now, you're not flying alone. You can't hide forever, Robert." The voice came through the radio, calm, cold, familiar. Robert froze behind the steering wheel. Clara's eyes met his. She knew that voice too well. "Martin," she whispered. "Miss Morgan," the voice continued smoothly. "You've disappointed me. After everything I did for you, you run off with a man who doesn't exist on paper? How ungrateful." Robert clenched his jaw. "Cut the theatrics, Greeley. The world's about to learn who you really work for." A low chuckle vibrated through the static. "You think that flash drive will save you? We own every news channel, every server. By dawn, both of you will be fugitives. And Robert, don't bother trying to reach the girl." Robert's breath caught. "What girl?" Clara's face paled. "Robert?" Martin's tone turned almost gleeful. "You never told her, did you? Your wife didn't die in that fire. Neither did your son. We took them. And the child? She grew up under our care, bright, talented, loyal. You might even know her by her call sign, Spectre 3. Robert's blood ran cold. "You're lying." "Oh, I never lie, Captain Hayes," Martin said softly. "We trained her to hunt ghosts like you." The transmission cut. For a moment, the silence inside the truck was suffocating. Then Clara whispered, "Robert." "He said your name was Hayes." Robert exhaled slowly. "It was, before I erased it." He looked toward the horizon. "If she's alive, then they'll use her to bring me in." Clara put a hand on his shoulder. "Then we get to her first." They reached a small coastal airfield just before sunset. The sky was bruised purple, wind sweeping off the ocean in cold gusts. Robert guided the VX-9 out of the hangar, its frame patched, ready for one last flight. Clara loaded the duffel with the data drive and a portable transmitter. "We leak everything from the air. Once the files are live, there's no shutting them down." Robert nodded. "And Spectre 3? Clara tightened her grip on the bag. "We deal with her if she comes." As the chopper lifted off, the lights of the coast fell away beneath them. The sea shimmered silver under the moon. For an hour, they flew in tense silence, cutting across the Atlantic corridor toward an island just off Maryland, an old military outpost repurposed as a private research site. "That's Aerotech's backup server farm," Robert said. "If they know we have the data, they'll try to purge the originals from there. We stop that and their empire burns." Clara glanced at him. "And your daughter?" He didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark shape of the island rising out of the mist. The moment they landed, alarms blared across the compound. Robert jumped out, weapon raised. "Move!" Clara sprinted beside him as spotlights swept the landing pad. 3 armored guards rushed forward. Robert fired 2 warning shots. The third hesitated just long enough for Clara to yank the security. Card from his vest, they ducked. Into the main facility, a maze of glass corridors, and humming servers glowing, blue in the dark. Clara slammed the card into the first terminal. "I'm in. Uploading the drive now." Robert watched the security feed. Dozens of red dots, heat signatures, were converging on their position. "We've got 5 minutes, he said. "Then you'd better hold them off." The first wave hit hard. Black-clad operatives stormed the hallway, automatic fire shredding the walls. Robert moved with deadly precision. Controlled bursts, low crouch, every motion instinctive. The air filled with the sharp tang of gunpowder and ozone. 2 minutes! Clara shouted over the chaos. He ducked behind a console, reloading. Make it 1! Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the intercom. Hello, Father. Robert froze. Clara looked up, horrified. Oh my God! The ceiling speakers crackled again. They told me you died. Then they told me you betrayed us. I needed to see which was true. The door at the far end of the hall slid open. A woman stepped through. Early 20s, dark eyes, braided hair, dressed in tactical black. Her gaze was calm, curious, heartbreakingly familiar. Lydia, Robert whispered. She tilted her head. They said you killed my mother. I would never, he said softly. They lied to you. Her expression didn't change. Prove it. She raised her weapon. Robert didn't move. I won't fight you, Clara shouted. Robert! But Lydia fired. The bullet tore through Robert's shoulder, spinning him back against the wall. He fell, clutching the wound, blood spilling between his fingers. Robert! Clara screamed. Lydia stepped closer, gun still raised. You're bleeding. Why won't you defend yourself? Because, he said, struggling to breathe. You're my child. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt. Pain, confusion. Lydia, he whispered. When you were 5, you wanted to fly more than anything. You built wings out of cardboard and paint. You said one day you'd touch the clouds. Her weapon trembled slightly. Nobody else knew that, he said. Nobody but you and me. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another voice cut through the speakers, sharp. Venomous, Spectre 3, finish the mission. Martin Greeley. Lydia flinched, torn between the voice in her ear and the man bleeding before her. Robert met her gaze. You don't have to obey him. You're not their weapon. You're mine. You're my miracle. Her breathing quickened. The gun wavered, then fell to the floor. She dropped to her knees beside him. Dad, Robert's eyes glistened. I knew you'd find your way back. Behind them, the terminal beeped. Upload complete, Clara called out, tears in her eyes. It's live. The whole world's seeing it. The facility erupted with chaos. Sirens wailed as encrypted files burst across every major network, newsrooms, defense agencies, government archives. Aerotech's crimes were no longer hidden. But Martin Greeley wasn't finished. From the observation deck above, he watched the data storm unfold, fury twisting his face. Cut the main servers, he shouted. Shut them. Too late. He turned and saw Robert standing below, bloodied but unbroken, Lydia beside him. Martin, Clara's voice rang out. It's over, Martin sneered. Over? You naive fools. You think one leak ends this? Aerotech is a 1,000-headed serpent. He reached into his coat and pulled a detonator. And I can still burn you all, Robert's voice thundered. Don't you dare. Martin smiled. Goodbye, Captain Hayes. He pressed the trigger. The ground shook. A massive explosion ripped through the lower floors, fire racing up the walls. The blast hurled Clara backward. Lydia grabbed her, shielding her from the debris. Robert stumbled, coughing smoke. Go, get to the chopper. What about you? Clara cried. I'll hold him. Robert, go. Clara hesitated only a moment, then pulled Lydia toward the exit. Flames swallowed the corridors behind them. Robert limped up the metal stairs to the deck, smoke stinging his eyes. Martin was trying to reach a rooftop evac craft. Robert charged, tackling him against the railing. The detonator clattered away. Martin swung wildly, snarling. You ruined everything! Robert pinned him. You ruined lives. They struggled, the railing creaking under their weight. Below, the helipad was collapsing into fire. Martin spat blood. You think exposing me matters? Someone will replace me tomorrow. Robert's voice was low, deadly calm. Then I'll make sure they remember your name as the last. He drove Martin backward. The railing snapped. Martin Greeley plunged into the inferno below. Robert staggered, chest heaving. The deck tilted beneath his feet. Flames licked up the walls. He turned toward the exit, but his legs gave out. The pain in his shoulder flared white-hot. Somewhere above the roar, he heard Clara screaming his name. Then, rotor blades. The VX-9 descended through the smoke. Piloted by Lydia, Clara leaned out, shouting, "Grab my hand!" Robert forced himself up the last steps. Clara reached out. Their fingers brushed once, then again. This time, he caught her hand. Lydia pulled them both into the cockpit just as the platform collapsed behind them. The VX-9 shot upward, fire chasing its tail into the night sky. They flew in silence for a long while, the city far below flickering like a dying ember. Finally, Clara broke it. "The world knows now. Aerotech, Vanguard, everything. There'll be trials, arrests." Robert nodded weakly. "And you?" She smiled sadly. "I'll rebuild honestly this time. No shadows, no puppets." She glanced at him. "And you?" He looked at his daughter, sitting at the controls, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I've already got everything I lost." Days later, the story exploded across global networks. Headlines screamed, "Aerotech Scandal Exposed." CEO Clara Morgan and ex-pilot Robert Hayes reveal massive cover-up. Governments disavowed the program. Arrests swept through the corporate underworld. Martin Greeley's death was ruled incident under investigation. In a quiet coastal town, far from the noise, Robert sat on a weathered bench overlooking the sea. Lydia walked beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You ever going to stop flying?" she asked with a small smile. He chuckled. "When the sky stops calling," Clara approached, wind tugging her hair. "I spoke with the Senate this morning. They're naming you both as witnesses in the tribunal. You ready?" Robert looked at her. "No, but that's never stopped me," she smiled. "Good answer." For a moment, the 3 of them stood together, the ocean stretching endlessly before them, free, uncertain, alive. That evening, as the sun bled orange into the waves, Clara watched Robert tinker with the VX-9 parked on the shore. "You really think it'll still fly after all that?" she teased. He grinned. "She's tougher than she looks. Kind of like you." Clara folded her arms. "You know, when I said fly this chopper and I'll marry you, it was supposed to be a joke." He wiped his hands on a rag. "Was it?" She laughed softly. "Maybe not." He stepped closer, eyes warm but tired. "We've both been through hell. Then maybe it's time we live for something better." He hesitated, then took her hand. "You sure about that?" Clara looked out over the sea, wind catching her hair. "I've never been more sure of anything." Robert smiled faintly. "Then buckle up, Morgan. The sky's ours." Months later, the world had changed. Aerotech was gone. Vanguard reborn under new ethics and transparency laws. The name Robert Hayes became a symbol of courage and truth, the man who fell from the sky to bring justice from above. One morning, Lydia opened a small flight academy under her own name, Hayes Aviation School. Her first lesson was written on a chalkboard. "Courage isn't flying without fear. It's flying despite it." Robert watched from the hangar doorway, pride softening the lines on his face. Clara stood beside him, her hand brushing his. "You finally made peace," she said quietly. He smiled. "Not peace, purpose." She tilted her head toward the gleaming VX-9 on the runway. "Then where to next, Captain?" He looked at the sky, vast, blue, endless. "Anywhere the wind allows." The rotors spun, dust swirling around them as they climbed once more into the clouds. And far above the world that once broke them, 3 souls flew together, free at last.